pull on that jersey. You represent yourself and your teammates. And a name on the front is a hell of a lot more important than the one on the back. Get that through your head.
And here we go.
And it is no good. He missed it. Are you kidding me? The season can't end like that.
The playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Some goofball in a hat and a red shirt. Now he takes off the shirt. He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs to the 50. He runs to the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms. Bare-chested. Somebody stop that man.
Nobody ever tells me anything, so I'm going to try and tell you everything I know about the SFL. Happy Friday, everybody. Another bone-chilling day here in, well, South Texas. In fact, a lot of cold spots around the majority of the country again. A lot more snow, sleet, ice all around the country. I hope you're safe again today as you were yesterday, and hope everybody's doing well. Another week is gone here in 2022 as we approach week number 8 here in the SFL. Trying to figure out if we've got everything going, so pardon my there we go, we've got everything going. Okay, pardon my absent-mindedness here, but just making sure we got everything going, making sure that we're live, and making sure everybody can see that, there's actually a show going on tonight. So I think we're just about ready to get going. Today, of course, is Now You Know. We're going to go ahead and go through the week 4 slate of games. Only 8 of them because 8 teams are on their first of 2 bye weeks. And so let's just go ahead and crack right into it, shall we? Game number 1. Well, before we hit to game number 1, let's just remind everybody that all the spreads are provided by the amazing people over at Jack's Data. The SFL community on Who You Got is 19-1. And that's just exactly where we find my predictions here against the spread, also 19-17. 2 games above 500, so I guess that's all right for both of our predictions. And as far as best bets go, I got 2-1 on best bets so far this season. All right, moving on to the actual games. First game coming up on Saturday afternoon. This one, Fort Worth and Queen City, and Queen City is favored by 3.5. I think that's about right where they should be. Fort Worth only has 1 victory in the meetings between these two clubs, and Fort Worth, of course, is 0-3 coming into week 4. Queen City has 1 win on the record against Mexico City, though they did fall in quite collapsing fashion to Houston a week ago. A couple of things to note here is, what are we really going to see from both clubs? I'm interested to see whether or not Queen City's defense is consistent or Fort Worth's offense is consistent, because right about there is where we stand with things. I mean, Fort Worth's defense is, they pride themselves on their defense last couple of seasons, especially the season when they went to the playoffs. They're only their second season in the league. But from then on, it's been kind of battered and bruised for the most part. And so I think Queen City, with a 3.5 point spread in the advantage, I think Queen City takes this game here in week 4. Moving on to game number 2. This one will be the Charleston Predators at home taking on Vancouver. I have this game a little bit mixed up. I think Vancouver is game number 4. Anywho, Vancouver and Charleston, and I'm really interested to see whether or not Vancouver, with a 6.5 point advantage, according to Jack's Data, how they fare against a good defense. Jacksonville's defense against Vancouver was all right in most cases. Los Angeles defense put up quite, an okay showing. Still allowed 30 points that football game. Carolina's defense wasn't up to the task either, but Vancouver's games have been fairly close. I mean, the Jacksonville game, that was their only really quote-unquote Vancouver blowout, only a win by 14 points. So a game by 6.5, I think, is kind of a little bit too much. So I think Charleston, if they play good defense, the offense does enough, which I think Vancouver will do, or Charleston will do, I think this game will be a lot tighter than a lot of people think. So Charleston, I'm giving the advantage to here in game number 2. Okay, game number 3, Los Angeles, Florida. The Lycans are a little suspect in my case. Of course, they have that week 1 win against Charleston in a very tight game in Charleston. The Florida team, of course, started off on the wrong foot, lost to San Diego, and then picked up 2 wins in the bounce versus Portland and Carolina. So for both these teams, I think is a statement game. Whoever comes out here, I think stands probably more of a shoe-in to make the playoffs. Florida have the advantage with 9.5, but I think that's a little bit too lofty for the Lycans. And I think it might be because of, how much Florida beat Carolina last week, because, of course, Carolina, without 3 of their top offensive weapons, might be contributing a little bit to this. But I think Los Angeles stand a good chance of covering that 9.5 point spread. Los Angeles only have 1 win on the matchup history, and that's coming all the way back in season 14 when Los Angeles were back in Chicago. So we're going to have to see whether or not the Florida can be the Florida we know and love. Of course, with Charlie Boletsky, because he's going to be able to run over Los Angeles and run over Tim Hot, or I wanted to say Tim Hackett for a second, but Jim Hacksaw. That's even the wrong name. Hacksaw. Jack Hacksaw. There we go. Jim, Jack, Tim. Oh boy. The defense though for Florida is probably going to be the toughest shell to crack. When I'm taking a look at everybody's stats and everything for Florida, they've got a whole bunch of people in the top 10 of stats. Boletsky's in the top 10 for almost every single one of his stats. When you take a look at Los Angeles, a lot of those players are in the top 30 of stats going into this season. So that just goes to show you that the more so the leaders of the SFL are on Florida, and so I think that also might be contributing to the factor. However, Los Angeles can play tight when they want to, and I think Sully Richardson's going to have a better game than he's had in the first couple of weeks. I think Los Angeles covered this 9.5 spread that Jack's data has given them. Moving on to Mexico City and DC, and the real question is, they asked yesterday, I think the question around the league is, can DC keep up a perfect season when they face Mexico City at home? And we know from last week, the home teams didn't really have, a whole lot of luck. Only 3 home teams come out with a victory. A lot of the away teams came in and played spoiler. Mexico City can do that. The last time they were up in the Northeast is against Queen City, and they lost. It was snowing in Queen City. I don't think it's supposed to snow in DC this week. However, I do think because of the style that DC plays, the style of football that DC plays, I think DC will cover the spread. And Mexico City, I think, should still win this game, but I think it's going to be a 4-point ball game instead of maybe a touchdown ball game. That's how I see it. Okay, on to Sunday slate of games. This is Carolina and Portland, and clearly between these two clubs, even Carolina with a 3.5 point spread, I think that's too low. I think Carolina is clearly the better team versus Portland. Their defense is much more refined. Their offense is clicking when it wants to this season. It didn't get off to the right start versus Vancouver. They played Florida, lost their offensive weapons. It's kind of like deja vu when Tulsa lost Douglas Brown in week 1, comes in week 2, comes in week 3 versus Louisiana and runs roughshod on them. I think Carolina's going to run roughshod on Portland, and Portland's going to fall to 0-4. Carolina will move back to 500 with a 2-2 record. I think it just goes to show you that when you have all your pieces on the field, it should be a pretty smooth sailing day for the Carolina Skyhawks. Moving on to game number 6, it is the aforementioned Tulsa Desperados. I was just talking about them. they play Denver, and Denver, I think, is going to have a little bit of tough time. We saw how Tulsa came out against Louisiana last week with a very dominant display. Denver, I think, is a better team than Tulsa. The offense is much more dynamic when it comes to play calling, I think, compared to Louisiana from last week. Eric Price is much improved. Bailey O'Shaughnessy is a fantastic back. They both had tremendous days against Sioux Falls last week. So it's basically two heavy hitters, I think, coming into this football game. Tulsa maybe the underdog here in this one, but I think Tulsa might, I think there's going to be a lot of close games this week, and I think Tulsa's going to shock Denver and the rest of the league. Moving on to game number 7, and this one is my best bet of the week, and I'm going against almost everybody in the league when I'm saying that Sioux Falls is going to easily cover this 6.5 spread. When I was looking at Swamp Talk, no one had Sioux Falls in the pick'em. They all had Las Vegas. Again, that's just picking straight up. So maybe a couple of them wanted to go Louisiana or Sioux Falls, but we'll have to see. Anywho, Sioux Falls' offense is much different. It's much more it's much more easy on the eye in terms of how they play. They seem to be not so stuck in their ways. And it showed the last 2 games. Of course, they took Denver to overtime in week 3. They beat St. Louis in St. Louis in week 2 by 3 points and forcing a whole bunch of turnovers. They forced a whole bunch of turnovers versus Denver as well. So I think Sioux Falls stand a really good chance of taking a win this weekend. And I'm picking them as my best bet. We'll see if that pays off. All right, on to the final game of week 8 is the Revolution taking on the Scorpions, Arizona, with a 3.5-point lead. I just got to say, I don't have a good feeling about this one for the Revolution. The Revs have never beaten Arizona, either as the New Orleans Pharaohs or with Arizona being the OKC Renegades. Louisiana has never lost to an Arizona franchise, never lost to an OKC franchise. But for some reason, I don't have a good feeling about it. Arizona coming off of 2 straight losses after beating Tulsa week 1, Louisiana in the same boat. They beat Sioux Falls week 1 and have also fallen 2 straight games. So something's got to give. Someone's got to pick up the victory, and I think Eddie Gage is going to have the perfect game plan against Tommy Utah and Cullen Hart to not only snag a couple of picks, but snag maybe a pick 6 or 2. I think Arizona's defense is that good this season, and I think 3.5 might be just too short of a margin for Louisiana to cover. I'm picking Arizona here in this one. Those are my picks here in week 4. Another fantastic week of NETMA. And as we get ready for SFL action here this weekend, hopefully you guys watch plenty of games. And all those teams that are sitting on the sideline this weekend, go and check out some of these games, especially the Saturday ones. I think those are going to be a fantastic watch. Just check out all of them. Watch as many as you can this weekend. And I'll see you this weekend. I'll see you next Tuesday. No show Monday. So we'll pick right back up on Tuesday, and we'll just go from there. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week, and we'll see you tomorrow. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night.